All right, welcome back, everybody, to another wonderful Wednesday. Tonight, we're going to be talking about ruling reality. So, are you willing to entertain a new way of thinking? Yes, the question has been raised for thousands of years, and we have tons of research from the last 100. Einstein, and I think his name is Born, were arguing about what is more important. Are we a materialistic world, or are we more from a conscious idealism world, right? And this is a scientific conversation trying to explain everything. And so Debbie and I are here to just shed a little light on the things that we've learned, because the reality as we know it might not really be the reality that we think it is. Boom, boom. Like, I know my mind was blown, really, looking at all of this information about our ability to rule reality. And oh, I want to point out tonight, I expect you to be skeptical. I'm definitely, when I started hearing some of the stuff, I was like, what is this? What? But when you change the way you think and then you start seeing it appear in your life, you go, oh my gosh, I think this is real. So for me, and accepting that maybe reality isn't all I thought it was, like I just thought we're all just here. We do things, that everything's happening by chance. And yes, I have free will and free choices to make in this world. But what I didn't realize was that when I start creating my world and I'm living more intentionally, the world kind of lines up for us. So things that we see as coincidences in life, you could still chalk it up to, if you want, just total randomness, right? But where in the world is everything super random? And if you take a real close look, I think you're going to find out it's not as random as we sometimes think. It is actually, what do they call that? Like by divine design or something like that, right? And so our lives are part of this world. And so they are by design going to line up for us to have the best outcome. I was trying to think, Debbie, really hard about like a story where I could specifically say, like, I wasn't expecting something to happen and then it did. And I'm not 100% sure I can, other than actually maybe this program finding me in exactly the right time in my life where, like, things were happening in my life. I've talked about this a lot. Things were happening in my life that were not so pleasant. They were not good. I was repeating patterns until I said, that's it. Okay, I'm ready for a new way, right? And then miraculously, people started showing up and things like EMF that were like, you're ready, and here's a path that you can take. And of course, it was up to me to choose the path, right? And I know we're going to talk about a little bit later, like, how do we change our future by making intentional choices? And how does that show up in our life? And for me, this program really was a huge part of changing my trajectory in my life, but it only happened once I was ready to accept it. So I hope that, like, it kind of makes sense in that way. Does that make I hope it makes sense.
Yeah, they say that when the student is ready, the teacher appears, and it
Yes,
has
and that's
happened. It's happened to me too. I think in the right time. I mean, I wasn't looking for EMF. It found me. Totally
exactly.
wasn't looking for it. It was totally just chance in a way. I had no idea. Wasn't even looking for any transformation at all. I thought I was good enough the way I was, and
Right?
I
That's
was,
amazing.
but I'm
Yeah,
better now.
absolutely. So that's pretty much my story. Like, I was seeking something, I didn't know what. And then this and a couple other things all fell into place for me. And that's my big story about just life happening for us. But I do believe by design. Like, it felt like
Yeah.
coincidence to me, but perfectly what I
Well,
needed at the time.
that's good. I'm glad because that meant that you and I got to meet each other.
Absolutely.
And yeah, it's all good. And, I'm kind of similar to you in that I really wasn't thinking much about any of this. And as a matter of fact, I was I was working with a lady who is a dating coach, and she's trying to get me onto this dating site. It was because I am plant based. It was a kind of a called I think green something. But anyway, I don't even remember the name of it. So you can tell I really signed up. But one of the questions they were asking, in your profile that you were supposed to answer they had a ton of questions you could answer, and that would help prospective people to figure out if they thought you were a good fit. And one of the questions was how do you define or what is consciousness to you? And I can tell you the answer I would have put on there a year and a half ago is totally not even close to the answer that I would put now at all. Not
Right.
even related. I didn't even know what consciousness was that we are speaking about now. But I did believe in the universe. I did believe in the universe. I'm not a religious person. And so if you're listening there is there an out there, but if you're listening out there, you need to listen with an open mind, because I think when we started learning about reality, the way that it was approached and what we're going to talk about, you really need to have an open mind. As Deb said, you need to be skeptical and sort it out for yourself. You don't have to believe us. You can do your own research, or you can, you may already have your ideas planted. But I believed in the universe. I wasn't really. I definitely am not religious, but I did believe there was something out there. But I didn't pay attention to it until EMF, our Elite Mentorship Forum. And that the first module is exactly where we talk about ruling reality, and we set the stage about what consciousness is and what reality is, and that totally blew my mind. And even to this day, it because it's hard to see, you don't see it. It's hard to fathom. So keep an open mind, because you need to. But I every so often I would have these things happen to me that I couldn't explain. And to me, the only way I can explain them is the universe is looking out for me. So I'm going to tell you, if it's okay, one of my times. I have two actually that I thought of, and they both involve travel by plane, and they both involve London. So I have two Londons in my life. I have London, Ontario. So I live in Toronto, and 2 hours away, well, an hour and a half away from me is London, Ontario. And so there's also London, England. And I have a daughter that moved to London through to just over 2 years ago. And it was my first time last year. I was going to visit her and see get a chance to see where she lived and all of that stuff. So I booked my flight and everything. And by the way, if you're in Toronto, and you say I'm going to London, you have to specify London, England, because otherwise everybody's going to assume you're talking about London, Ontario, which is so close. So I booked my flight, and I have all my flights booked. And here's the kind of person I am. I set it and I forget it. So once I booked everything and I had it all down, I just leave it alone. And then when I go to check in the day before, I pull up the email, or I pull up my app or what have you, and I check in. And usually now they send you an email to say check in. Well, for some reason, I was leaving on Monday afternoon, and for some reason, my I had this thing that was telling me, so pull up the email and check the email. Don't ask me why, because I never do that. But I pulled up the email, I found the email and I checked it, and things didn't look right. It was like the times looked really weird because I was leaving at 1 p.m. and I was getting into Toronto at 2 p.m. or something like that. And there's a like a 5 hour time difference and all, there's the 5 hour flight. So I'm like, what the heck is going on? So I looked at it closer, and here I had booked my return flight from London, Ontario to Toronto. All right. So this is like not going to happen because, and by the way, the flight is probably as much to do that as it is to go to London, England. So that gave me the opportunity to actually call the airlines and cancel the flight that I had booked for from London, Ontario to Toronto, and book it from London, England to Toronto. And because it was 3 days in advance, I still had my opportunity to do it without any penalty. And I was okay. I was able to do it, and everything worked out perfect. Had I done my normal thing and pulled up my itinerary on the Sunday, I would have been in the 24-hour period where there's no changes allowed. And by the way, if you don't take the flight, you lose it. So it's a lose or use by that, use or lose at that point. So I think the universe was looking out for me. So every so often I have those kind of things, they're kind of maybe out of the twilight zone, but definitely I feel that the universe is looking out for me, and I do have these things happen. Now that I'm more attuned to it, I see more of these things. And one of the things you can do if you are seeing things that seem coincidental, or why would this happen? It just seems out of the blue, is to write it down in your diary so that you can keep what we call a journal of confirmation that can kind of help you to really establish that, yeah, there is something. There isn't an out there. There's something out there. But Deb, you're going to talk a bit more about get into the meat of this, like what, how, and we're going to talk science today. Like that's the cool thing for me, who's a science kind of person. We're going to talk about it from how the science has looked at this. It's not just all woo woo. There's actually science behind it.
Right. So, yeah, here we go. Some deep stuff here. So, how do things really work, right? There's been a lot of conversation about it, and after Newton and Bohr and all of these scientists from the last 100 years have been trying to decide what is up with the world, what is happening here, how did we get here, and how does it all work, right? And they discovered some fundamental truths that we can kind of, is the word quantate? I'm not sure, like gravity. We know that gravity is real. We know that light is real. Um, we learned some rules around them, right? Like how do they work? And so we can figure that out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they've been trying to explain, how do our lives work? What are we doing here, right? And how do we, can we, not how do we affect our lives, or how do we understand it? And the best way that they have come to describe it is kind of looking at it as a video game. I think we've heard of the Sims. I'm going to say The Sims. That's The Simpsons. That's not what we're talking about. Sims games, basically virtual reality games where in a game you're living a life, right? In the game. And while you're in the game, you're experiencing life as the character. And so what they've said, that if we can see ourselves as characters in a game, and what we're doing is we're learning the rules here on Earth, and we learn how to affect what's happening in our world, it becomes a little easier. And we also learn that what's happening to us, and when we increase like the quality of our own personal life and our own personal relationships, we ultimately have this greater effect that just kind of naturally spreads. And I know this is these are big concepts, but the idea though is that like it's so crazy. It's just such a big concept, and I'm new to explaining this. But basically, that's it. It's like I'm trying to think of the term that they used. It's non-locality, right? So what everybody always thought was that you would have to be in the presence of something to make an impact on it. So saying that, like, and we've all experienced this, like you walk into a room, right? You can sense the feeling of the room, right? You're either like, oh, this is a happy feeling or a sad feeling or a energetic mood or a calm mood when you walk into a room. Okay. So that's locality, though. You're having an experience right where you're at. And what they found out, though, is that yes, that moment, that locality, being in the same place and having that same effect is affecting the people around you. And then what else they realized, though, was that happy or sad moment happening right there actually kind of has the effect as a general feel of things that spreads beyond just that room. So the big idea here, though, is that like you want to increase your own happiness and fulfillment and joy, because when you do that, it will resonate off of you and it will be palpable to the people around you. And if we can continue to spread this more positive vibration, it will just continue to grow. And it may hit some resistance when you hit some more negative situations or somebody who isn't able to bring themselves into a positive place. But it will be something that can be felt by others. So I know a lot of that, I feel like I'm talking all over the place, just in case anybody else does. But that's just because this is such a it is a really new way of thinking. That reality, one person's reality affects another person's reality, which then affects the global reality. So another big part or kind of thing that I think we wanted to mention here, this is just so you can go check this out on your own, is called a split experiment. And that is recognizing that the matter in this world is affected by our awareness of it. So I know it sounds crazy. Anyways, what they did in this, if you go check it out, what it's saying is that matter exists, okay? But what we think of as matter is less permanent and less solid than we realize. And what happens though is observing matter changes the way matter behaves. And that is like mind blowing. So if you'd like to blow your mind today, I suggest you just go look up split experiment and what does that mean, like for us, because it has a fundamental impact on the way that we do look at reality and see reality and understand how our observations of the world and our thoughts about the world impact not just our lives, but the lives of people outside of us. And so I think that's all I want to say for now. I know it's mind blowing and I feel like I'm like all over the place trying to explain it. But these are new ways of thinking. So
Yeah, so this is all stuff that, when you look at it, we all grew up and we are taught in school about the Newtonian, uh, physics, I guess, or the Newtonian reality, which is that we're all here and we're all matter. And that's it. It's all materialist. And we are, there's atoms, and then there's, like you said, there's gravity and there's light. And we know how they work, but we don't know how they are. Why are they here? And, we don't know the bigger principles of it. We just know that the equations of that, they follow a rule set, and that's the equations. But I wanted to talk about Tom Campbell. He is a physicist who had a illustrious 37-year career, including 2 years working at NASA as a nuclear physicist. He was. So he is I would say, by all accounts, he is a reputable scientist. And so, scientists live and breathe by experiments and what they see. They do not do woo-woo kind of stuff. And he developed this theory from all the things that he did and worked on. He started doing some side work in the early 70s on consciousness. And he has developed a very comprehensive theory called My Big Toe. And toe is theory of everything. And so this theory of everything is bridging the gap between the physical world and our metaphysical world and bringing it into one scientific understanding. And so all of that to say that he is explaining in his theory of everything, he is explaining how things work. And it's not just the matter piece, it's actually that metaphysical piece, which is, the stuff that we can't measure, which, and we don't really know a lot about. So he's been able to explain it. And the key concept, Deb has already talked about this, but the key concept is we live in a virtual reality. That's it. And so, yeah, if you can get your head around that you're in a computer game, and the computer analogy works really well. I mean, I don't know what they would have done 100 years ago when they didn't have computers, but now that we have computers, at least we have a metaphor for it. But yeah, so if you think about if you think about you are the character or the avatar in the computer and in the game, and the player, which is consciousness or the universe, is has the controllers. It's just much like The Sims, right? Because that's the only game my kids played when they were younger. So I can at least get that one. And so reality itself is actually computable. And our consciousness is an information system. So we gather up information. And how do we gather the information? It's through our senses. So by touch, taste, smell, hearing, and by our sight. And then we interpret those signals, that's the data that we're bringing in, and we're gathering that data into our memory. And we know we have memory because if we didn't, everything would just be we would need to kind of re-baseline. We'd have nothing to compare it to if it's the first time. And so we put everything, we interpret the signals, and that goes into our memory, and we use that to kind of determine what things are. Now, our larger consciousness system, which Tom Campbell calls the LCS, is basically the source, the field, you could call it, or it is the information system that's all together. And the LCS itself starts at the simplest piece as a binary. So I took computer science, and literally I had to do this big project where I had to add up ones and zeros, binary, 0, 1, 0, 1. And we had probably 100 zeros and 1 down the row. And you just had to keep adding 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1 and keep going. And so that's basically the smallest. That's how computers work as well. Binary, 0, 1, but then you put a system together, right? So it's not only zeros and one, you start putting a system together. And once you have this, it evolves into bigger systems with patterns and sequences. You get your information system. And this system, which is our larger consciousness system, is looking to go to the lowest entropy it can. And so when you look at what is entropy, entropy is how organized things are. And our consciousness system, the LCS, wants to have the most organization it can. So the lower the entropy, the more it likes it. And so that's what the entropy is. And so we're basically trying to move to lower entropy in this system that we live in. And that's how it's explained. So the observations are that we have a purpose. We're all pieces in a larger consciousness system. We're part of a virtual machine. You know, we all have our own little virtual, everybody has their own virtual reality. And then it's in a bigger virtual reality. So just take that one to the bank. And Deb's going to talk a bit more about this. Love is the answer. Love is how you get to the lowest entropy. And the system is continually working and evolving. And the whole idea is to get to the lowest entropy. And so the only other thing I'll say is if you are in a state of love and you are truly loving, then you will be helping the system, the LCS, to get to that lower entropy. And the system is going to help you because it needs you to help get to lower entropy. And so that's like the real positive of this. So when I must have had love when the system helped me to make sure I got home from London, England, instead of London, Ontario. So that's how it would be explained. So everything is about evolution to a lower entropy, which is love-based choices. And if we are de-evolutionary, that means we are moving to higher entropy. And that would be when we are making fear-based choices. So we all have choices, love-based or fear-based choices. We're helping the system out when we're evolutionary when we're making love-based choices. And then we're not helping the system out and we're de-evolutionary when we're making fear-based choices. And so, Deb, maybe you could talk a little bit about the whole concept of love and fear, because that is really the crux of it.
It really is. And so basically, like you talked about, we're trying to, like I said, when we change our own reality, our perception, and how we're experiencing life for ourselves, and then that gradually it ripples out and has that ripple effect. And so the fastest way to love is to remove all fear. And I know it sounds easier said than done, right?
Simple but not easy.
But some things that I found, like we have to realize though that first of all, our bodies, our brain is meant to protect us, right? And so it is always aware and creating fear to protect us. Unfortunately, the fears that we're all facing now, well, I say unfortunately, but in reality, it's actually very fortunate because people used to have real physical threats to their lives. And, like being chased by saber-toothed tigers or eating the wrong food and dying or not having access to, like just not knowing what to do. How do you protect yourself from the elements, right? And now for the majority of us, and yes, there are people in the world who have real physical threats to their lives. And for them, It may be hard to focus on some of these things that we're thinking about today because the first step is, yes, you have to be physically safe, right? But for the majority of the world living today, I know here in the United States, in Canada, most countries in the world, we're in an amazing time where the fears that we're facing are kind of self-created because our minds are meant to find danger. They're looking for the negative, they're looking for the different. And so, how do we move from fear to love? We have to become aware and recognize that most of our fears that we're having aren't based in a physical harm or any real danger. They're based on the opinions of others, the thoughts of others, or our own limiting beliefs about what's going to happen if we dot, 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 whatever it is, right? And so when we're walking around with all this fear, we're being judgy, we're being guarded. And when we're acting in those ways, we're stuck in the fear. So if we can let go of all that and recognize that, like, I don't need to worry about what everybody else is thinking about me. I just need to know that my intentions are good and that my actions are based on my intentions. And then I can go about my day with love. And even when things go wrong or someone might not act the way I think they should, um, I don't need to become so engulfed in that I lose myself and I lose who I am, but I can extend love even to them, even in that moment where it's not it's not the most comfortable situation, maybe, you know? And so that's basically it, is just removing all of those fake fears, replacing them with love, knowing that when we come from a good place in our heart and we extend that love to other people and the situations in our lives, that we're creating a space that grows more love. And so, as if I can evolve and then I can affect the people in my family and the people in my circle, and I just am a beam of shining love, I let others be a beam of shining love too, because they know that I'm a safe space. And when we create safe spaces, we're okay, I can actually be myself here and I'm going to be loved and accepted. And that grows and grows and grows. And then we all learn to be less fearful because we stop judging ourselves, we stop judging others, and then we don't have that fear of other people and their input, and we're not worried about these other things happening in our lives. So we just become the love, and that just creates a better world for everyone.
Yeah,
So,
and the universe will reward you, or the system will reward you. The larger consciousness system will reward you, that LCS, because you are making an evolutionary impact on the world, on our system, on our virtual reality, if you will.
right?
Think of it
Yes,
that way. And that is where you get rewarded. If you were running around in hate and fear, yeah, your universe doesn't really want much to do with you because you're going the wrong way. You're taking it the wrong way. But we're moving towards that perfect system. We're not anywhere near it, but that's
no, we're
the
not.
deal. And Tom believes that eventually we will get there. I don't know how long. You don't know when, you don't know how, but eventually we will get to that place. Uh, that's the scientific side coming through, right? Is
Absolutely.
eventually. But
And
I
the
don't know.
awareness globally, I think, is growing, that these are the rules of
Yeah,
reality. And as more and
yeah,
more people learn them and implement them, we'll start to see changes happening faster.
yeah. That's a
So,
good point. That is a really good point because That is true, because Tom also says that up until the last 100 years or so, and when all of these advances have happened, the world was more worried about surviving than anything else.
Right.
Exactly what you were saying. So that's a really good point. And we'll get there. And now we're on the, if you, I'm a math science person, so I could look at an exponential curve. The curve is flat for a long time while we're learning, and then it starts to take off. And we're really at that cusp of taking off as people are becoming more and more aware, like you and I. Thankfully, we've learned a lot through our EMF, or Elite Mentorship Forum journey. And I just want to say, if you are interested in learning more, and it's all good. As we said, it's all simple. It's really simple. The choice between love and fear. It's very simple, but it's not easy, because there's a lot behind that. How do you get rid of those fears? And how sometimes our mind will trick us. Our intellect will make us think that we're in love, but we could be in fear. And so all of those things, the EMF journey is about raising consciousness for each one of us. And so, number one, we raise our consciousness by going through the 6-month program. And that starts with ruling reality, by the way, so you have a head start. And then after that, we also continue to raise consciousness by going over it and living it, and having a community of peers that are also doing the same thing. And so, you don't just get the 6-month program. It's a lifelong journey that Peter Sage is creating with his EMF experience. And if you want to hop on board and have a way to learn how to get self-mastery around your consciousness and raise your consciousness, then you need to talk to either Deb or myself, because we are getting ready to start our first EMF program. Peter Sage is our great instructor, but we are leading the facilitation of the program. And because it's our first, we are looking for about 2 to 3 people to jump in and be part of that. And you will not get a better opportunity than that. So if the student is ready, call us.
Absolutely. Yes. Let's grow together. It's an amazing journey.
For sure. All right. So that is it for now. Like we said, send us a comment or a DM or an email, whatever you can. Just get in touch with us, and we could just have a chat about what EMF is about. We can help you to raise your consciousness and help that system out. Be evolutionary. Bye for now.